My name's Kenny. I'm an addict. And first of all, I'd like to welcome all the new people. The war is over. You know, I got up this morning and I was reading the Just for Today book. And you know what? It stuck with me all day. I've been thinking about today's Just for Today all day. And it was about recovery being a process. And something that and this is, I'm paraphrasing, but it was about that recovery kind of flows. And we come into Narcotics Anonymous and we find the willingness to do the work. And we come to meetings and recovery just kind of flows, man. And it ebbs and it changes, and that's the way my recovery's been for almost the last 36 years that I've been here. You know, I'm in a step workshop right now, and we're on step 5. And you know what? I've worked the steps so many times in my life already, and when I got into this step workshop, I had low expectations, you know, and I got in there with about 5 guys that these guys are the best. You know, it's like they're loving and caring, and that's what this is all about, you know. And I've learned a lot of things in the last 8-9 months that we're in this workshop, and I'm going to get into that a little bit more as we go along. But first I want to tell you a little bit about me and how I got here. And, you know, I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I come from an Irish Catholic family that I got a lot of mixed bad messages from my family about religion and God, and my father was this tough little Irish guy that solved all his problems with his fist. And he used to tell me when I was a little kid, he would tell me, if anybody gives you any shit, smack them, and smack the biggest guy first. That was my father's motto, man. That's how he lived his life. My father was a very negative guy. He was a hater. He hated everybody. If you were different than him, he hated you. He didn't have to know you. All he had to know was that you were different than him. I like to say that my father was an equal opportunity hater. And that's what he did. He raised me that way. And, you know, I went through my, you know, young age through high school, and I didn't use any drugs. I played football. That was my thing. I played football. And my father used to tell me things like, forget about going to college, because we can't afford to send you, and you're too dumb anyway. So, and my father always put me down, always told me what I couldn't do. My father never told me what I could do, or I could do anything that I wanted to do. I never heard that. I heard what I couldn't do. And to make a long story short, when I was in 11th grade, some scouts from Penn State University came to see a bunch of the players on the team, me and some of the other players, about the possibility of us getting scholarships to play football for Penn State. I had my father's negative voice in my head, and all I could think about was, I can't do this. I'll never make it in college. Blah, blah, blah. And I came home, and I told my father that I was going to quit school and join the Army. And my father said something brilliant like, good, maybe the Army will make a man out of you. And this was in 1968. Now, I know I don't look that old. But it was like the height of the Vietnam War. And I went to see a recruiter, and he told me that if I joined, I was only 17, and if I joined the military now when I was 17, they could teach me a trade, and I could go to any country in the world, and I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam because you got to be 18 to go to Vietnam. So I said, cool, I want to be a truck driver, and I want to go to Germany. So I went through basic training. I went through heavy truck driving school. They shipped me out to Germany, and when I turned 18, they sent me to Vietnam anyway. And, you know, they sent me to this duty station in Fort Lewis, Washington. And when I got there with my orders, it was all Green Beret, man. It was all Special Forces, Green Berets everywhere. I went into the office, and I told the sergeant at the desk, Sarge, somebody made a mistake. I'm a truck driver. I'm not Special Forces. Somebody made a mistake. And the sergeant at the desk told me to shut up and get in line. So for 3 weeks, I trained with these Special Forces guys. And every day I told somebody, dude, somebody made a mistake, man. I'm a truck driver. So, and every day they told me to shut up and get in line. So finally they shipped me out to Vietnam, and I got there, I was in a combat engineering unit in the middle of the jungle attached to Special Forces. And I told them when I got there, somebody made a mistake. I'm a truck driver. Anyway, to make a long story short, I was in a unit that my squad were all junkies. And the squad over here were all alcoholics. And these guys over here, they were all potheads. And the Green Beret guys, they didn't use any drugs. They were just crazy. So I was in this upside down world, man. And I was 18 years old and I was terrified. I was a kid and I was terrified. And one of the guys in my squad offered me some heroin. And the first drug I ever used, besides a couple of beers, was heroin. And I was in Vietnam. I was there about a week and a half, and I already had a heroin habit. And, you know, they shipped me out of Vietnam. They sent me to Saigon and detoxed me in Saigon, and then sent me home to Philadelphia. It's like one day I'm in Vietnam doing whatever I want to get my drugs. I mean, we were fully armed. We could get drugs anytime we wanted them. So they shipped me home, and I'm telling myself that when I get home, I'm going to leave all this insanity behind me, and I'm going to start over, man. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to get a girlfriend, and everything's going to be cool, right? So I'm not even hardly off the base yet in Fort Ord, California, and there's a bunch of hippies protesting the war, throwing stuff at us and calling us baby killers. And the way that we were treated when we got home was probably worse on my emotional, on my emotions than being there in the first place. I just couldn't understand what was happening. Even my own father, my father would tell me that he was in a real war, and the war that I was in was not a real war. So, I got home and I went to this carburetor factory. For you young people, the carburetor used to go on a car. Now they don't. They really don't have carburetors anymore. But it was, I applied for this job. It was a no-brainer job. The carburetors came by on a conveyor belt, and you stuck screws or whatever in them. And I was in the owner's office filling out an application, and the owner grabbed the application, and he said, "You're a Vietnam vet?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, we don't hire Vietnam vets." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I don't want anybody flipping out and going crazy in my plant." So I flipped out and went crazy in his office. The cops came. It was a mess. The cop that came and took me out of there was a Vietnam veteran. And I was looking for answers, and he didn't even have any answers for me. He told me, he took me to my dad's house. He said, "I'm not going to arrest you," but he basically told me I need to just chill out. So I went home to my dad's house, and a couple weeks after being at my dad's house, my father threw me out because I refused to get a haircut. Be careful what you ask for, So I bought a motorcycle, and I went through Philadelphia like I was back in Saigon. And my bottom is I get locked up. They locked me up on the 3rd Keyway. I was in a courtroom in Philadelphia, and I was coming into the box in the courtroom, and I was shackled with handcuffs and shackles on my feet, and I'm shuffling into the courtroom, and my public defender, who had talked to the judge already about giving me a break because I was a Vietnam veteran, when I came into the courtroom, the judge said real loud, "Here comes the war hero. Let's see how much time we can give him." And I went away, and I had an attitude problem. I was angry and rageful, full of guilt, full of shame. I was in and out of jails and institutions for a long time, and it wasn't until 1983, in July of 1983, I was in a Dade County jail, kicking like a $600 a day heroin habit, and I was in front of this judge, and the judge wanted to give me 20 years in prison. And my public defender, always had a public defender. My whole career as a gangster, I don't think I ever made bail. So my public defender was telling the judge that Your Honor, he needs help. He's a drug addict. And they were going back and forth, and finally the judge said, "I don't know why I'm going to do this, but I'm going to put you on probation and send you to this treatment center in Miami," which was one of those therapeutic community treatment centers. They didn't believe in Narcotics Anonymous. They had one AA meeting a week. They came in there, and they liked to make us scrub floors and toothbrushes and shit. It was not a very nice place. But I was on 7.5 years of probation, and I was facing 20 years in prison. And, through that one AA meeting that they had come in there, through that AA meeting, I found out about Narcotics Anonymous. And when I got to get a pass to go off the facility, I went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And you know what, man? There was something special happening in that Narcotics Anonymous meeting, man. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I know that there was a bunch of guys in this meeting that were just like me. There was a bunch of guys in this meeting that had tattoos, and they were, they had smiles on their faces. Some of them had jobs. Some of them had cars. And I wanted what was happening in Narcotics Anonymous. And this was in 1983, and there was not a whole lot of Narcotics Anonymous meetings to go to. I mean, if you had a car, you could find the NA meeting every day. If you traveled to Fort Lauderdale and down South Miami, and, I didn't have a car. And a lot of us didn't have cars, so we were forced to go to the other fellowship. And I'll be forever grateful for them for letting us hang out with them until we got our shit together. And it's like I got a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor. And I remember going to my probation officer and telling her that I was staying clean and that I was going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And the next month when I went to report to her supervisor was in the office. And he told me, you're not allowed to go to those Narcotics Anonymous meetings. And I said, why? And he said, because there's criminals in NA. And I said, no shit, man. I mean, that's where I relate, man. I couldn't relate. I didn't feel comfortable in Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, man. So I ended up going in front of my judge and begging my judge to allow me to go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings regularly. And my judge said, I'm going to let you do that. And what's funny about this? Well, I guess it wasn't funny for him. But when I had 5 years clean, my judge got busted for bribery and thrown off the bench. And I sent him a letter with my condolences and let him know that I was still clean and that I appreciated him giving me that break. And, it's the rest is history. I made Narcotics Anonymous my home. I got a Narcotics Anonymous sponsor, and my sponsor told me, he said, the first thing I want you to do when you go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, I want you to raise your hand and say your name is Kenny and you're an addict. Because a lot of us used to say we were addicts and alcoholics because we were all confused. And the reason he wanted me to do that was so I could start feeling like I was part of what was happening in Narcotics Anonymous, man. And I attached myself to his hip. And we went around and we started doing service, man, everywhere. All of a sudden there was a clubhouse in North Miami called the old warehouse. And all of a sudden there was NA meetings every day, all day long. There was no shortage of NA meetings, man. And Narcotics Anonymous started to explode in South Florida. And my sponsor and I, we went around and we started a lot of meetings in South Florida. And one of the cool things about being clean for a long time in NA is that I not only got to grow up in my own recovery, I got to grow up alongside and in Narcotics Anonymous. I have ownership in NA. I feel like this is my program, man. It's part of me. It's my home. It's my sanctuary, man. It's where I come to be okay. And I mentioned earlier that I had a lot of rage and a lot of anger, man. And I wanted to fight everybody. Somebody would look at me in a meeting and I would say, what are you looking at? And I was just full of shame and guilt and anger and rage, man. I was in a meeting one time and I was pissed off about something because I was always pissed off about something. And I grabbed the table and I flipped the table and ashtrays. We used to smoke in meetings back then. Ashtrays and coffee cups and everything went flying. And I told everybody to get screwed and I went outside. And one guy followed me outside. And this one guy, he's no longer with us. But his name was Crazy Jim. And if you hang around NA for any length of time, you get a nickname. It's usually Right On. So this guy came outside, he followed me outside, and I turned and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he said, I like you. And we started laughing, and I said, I guess I better go in and apologize to the group. And we went back in the meeting, and I apologized, and I helped clean up the mess, and And you know what you guys told me? Kenny, we need you here. We love you, man. Keep coming back. And I don't know about you, but that impressed the shit out of me. I couldn't make you guys throw me out of here. I have found a home in Narcotics Anonymous, man. You know, my sponsor, when I first asked him to be my sponsor, he gave me his phone number and an assignment on step 1. And it's been like that ever since. I believe in working steps. I believe this is a 12-step program. And if I'm in here and I'm not working steps, I saw a newcomer that I was talking to, man, and I asked him what step he was working on, and he said, my sponsor said I'm not ready to work steps yet. He wants me to come here and hang out and get used to being here. That's not the way I was taught in Narcotics Anonymous. The way we get used to being here is by working steps. You know, my sponsor taught me that I need to buy into the process here 100%. And ever since he told me that, I've been in Narcotics Anonymous for almost 36 years now. And I've been talking about buying the whole package. And people nickname me Kenny the Package, but I'm not the package. Narcotics Anonymous is the package. You know, I can't afford to pick and choose what parts of recovery I want to do and what parts of recovery I don't want to do. I can't get a sponsor and just call them once in a while. I can't work steps 1, 2, and 3 and skip 4 and 5. You know, I need to do it all. And it's been a process for me. Just like today's Just for Today reading, man. It's been, you know, when I first came to Narcotics Anonymous, I started working steps right away. My sponsor gave me that assignment on step 1. I started doing the work right away. And I started doing that not because I was so willing, but because I was so desperate. I worked steps out of desperation. I came to meetings out of desperation. I talked to people out of desperation. My sponsor asked me, what do you want to get out of Narcotics Anonymous? I said, I want to stay out of prison. He said, I'm going to teach you how to do that. And he's been teaching me that. You know, he's not my sponsor anymore, but he taught me how to do that, man. And I believe in the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. I believe in the traditions. I believe in doing service. You know, I said that I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm a combat vet. I came home with PTSD that I've been dealing with for 50 years. And in Narcotics Anonymous, I found the answer for my PTSD. Now, PTSD is not curable. It's like the disease of addiction. It's not curable. But I can learn how to live in my own skin. I can learn how to be okay. An old guy told me a long time ago in Narcotics Anonymous, he told me that today's problems are unavoidable. Stuff that we go through is unavoidable. Life doesn't behave. But suffering is optional. And I believe in that, man. And, you know, I used to call my sponsor and bitch about having to ride the bus. Hated riding buses. Hated riding buses, man. And I would bitch about riding the bus, and he would say, well, who are you helping? And I would go, dude, man, what are you talking about? I'm bitching about the bus. And he goes, that's right, who are you helping? And I didn't understand what he meant at first. But giving back is important to me. Narcotics Anonymous has given me a purpose in life. I believe in giving back. I believe in doing service. I believe that when we give back, something special happens in here, man. I don't even know how to put that into words. I know that something special happens in my heart. My disease lives in my head. My recovery lives in my heart. And trust me, my disease is alive and well in my head, man. Dude, I got an imaginary 50 caliber machine gun on the hood of my car. And I even got 2 buttons on my steering wheel that operates that 50 cal. And I can point my car at people. Although I just found a cure for road rage. Just the other day, and I'm telling everybody about it. I have Sirius XM on my radio in my car, and there's a station that is called Netflix the Joke, and it's just constant stand-up comedians. Like every few minutes, a new one comes on, and I turn that station on, and I start laughing, and it's hard to have road rage when you're laughing, man. So I got people will cut me off, and I'll look at them and smile. I'm laughing, man. So anyway, that's an outside issue, I guess. But anyway, I believe in Narcotics Anonymous, man. I believe in giving back. I believe that, you don't even have to do much to give back in this fellowship, man. I know this guy that, God bless him, he has a hard time staying clean. And he's in and he's out, and he's in and he's out. And, he came back not that long ago, and I was in a meeting, and after the meeting, he came up to me and he said, Kenny, every time I come back, you're sitting there. And it felt like saying, duh. But that's a message, man. That guy's getting a message every time he comes back and sees me sitting in a meeting. If you're sitting in a meeting on a regular basis and new people come in and see you sitting there, they know something's happening here. Especially if you got a smile on your face. There's something infectious about smiling, man. I love to kick it around. I love to have a good time. And I'm going to better wrap it up, right? I want to say that a few years ago, I came down with an illness, and it's a very rare illness. Only 2 people have 100,000 get it. I woke up one day, couldn't walk, couldn't move my legs, couldn't control my feet, and I was going to doctor after doctor. I went through every doctor at the veterans, the VA, and nobody, it's bad when you go to a doctor and you say, and the doctor goes, I don't know, man, that's fucked up, man. What do you mean you don't know? And finally I went to this one doctor, and I was in a wheelchair for 5 months. And I was devastated. I was sitting in a meeting in my wheelchair, and my disease was talking to me, saying, look at you. You got all this clean time, but none of these young guys relate to you. You're just an insignificant old junkie. And that devastated me, man, because I told you a few minutes ago, Narcotics Anonymous has been my life for all these years, man. And if I can't sit here and make a difference in Narcotics Anonymous or give back in Narcotics Anonymous, man, what am I going to do? And I was terrified. And I started working. My sponsor had started me working on the first 3 steps specifically, acceptance and surrender. And I sat here where I'm sitting right now for years and talked about the spiritual principles and the steps like I thought I knew something. And I didn't know shit, man. You know, I started working steps, like I said before, out of desperation. Then I continued to work steps because, hey, this is pretty cool. That felt pretty good. Even when I had to ride the bus and work the step with my sponsor at his house and went home on the bus, I was smiling, thinking this is pretty cool. I can't wait to get started on the next step. Now I work steps because they're a lifeline for me. You know, Narcotics Anonymous is not about being a tough guy. It's not about being a badass. You know, this is not about strength. This is about being in touch with my powerlessness and being able to surrender and accept what's happening in my life, man. This is just another chapter in my life. I'm able to walk a little bit with a cane right now. But the last doctor I saw, the VA sent me to a doctor at Mount Sinai Hospital, the head neurologist there. And he looked at all my tests and he said, I think you need to find some acceptance. You know, after I got over wanting to throw him out the window, he's right. It all comes back to acceptance. I can't do anything. I can't go any further unless I'm able to find some acceptance first. And then I have to learn how to be able to let things go, man, and turn things over. And sometimes it's hard. I have a little scooter that I got from the VA. That I have a lift for on the back of my car, and it's given me a lot of freedom. But I'm in this little scooter, and I'm in Publix. People are cruel in Publix, man. Little old ladies, they run that cart right into that scooter, man. So, you know, some days I get angry and I get frustrated. And at times like that, I have to be able to stop and get in touch with my higher power and reach way down inside and find some acceptance, man, and some surrender and some gratitude. My favorite saying now is that I don't have a right to complain. Because every time I complain, I see somebody that's a little worse off than me. You know, and I don't know where I would be without Narcotics Anonymous, man. You know, really, if I didn't have NA, I might have to join the Elks Club or some shit, right? But I love Narcotics Anonymous. This is my home. It's my sanctuary. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys having me here to share with you. And that's all I got. Thanks.